Hello, I'm Doug Gibson. This is Steve Stones from Plan 9 Crunch, and we are at hallowed ground right now. We're at the home of the Goblin Ween in Troll 2, and they filmed it here at the Porterville LDS ward. Of course, since they made the movie, they had the fire, and it's a ruin now. Oh, I wish I could go there and touch it.
Or kings, the stranger the need, the greater the grief of girls who are there to play. But sin is like greed, the greater the need, the greater the price to pay. For love ain't money, to have its church worth for pay. For love ain't money, to have it.
We're standing here in front of the cafe where George Packard played the Goblin, and he sold a certain Nilbog milk. Remember, he called the other kind of milk the devil's milk. And we're in Morgan where they filmed Troll 2. Steve, you want to say anything?
There's one particular scene that takes place in the general store here where actor Jason Stedman, Drew is the character, walks into this general store and he's asking for bacon and eggs and milk, and Don Packard tells him that because they're vegetarians, they have none of these items inside of the general store.
He also goes something like, the devil's milk, the devil's food, doesn't he? Packard, in his own words in the documentary, Best Worst Movie, says he hated the little boy in that movie, although he's not in the scene, but he is later. And he really got into character, so it was very quite a performance from Don Packard. What I like about this scene is all the townspeople, the men are gathered around, and they're dressed in their regular clothes. They have cowboy hats, they have the sheriff there. Nevertheless, they try to be very sinister, and they are supposed to be the goblins. We're going to head to Porterville, to the home of Credence Leonore Gilgood. Thank you. We're now in front of the lair of Credence Leonore Gilgood. If you look very closely in the movie, you can see at the front where it says Porterville Ward. This is a historical building. It was dedicated by the LDS prophet Joseph F. Smith in 1908. The Porterville Church was built in 1898. And this wonderful thing is for sale for $205,000, $750. Wish I had the money, I'd buy it. But the ruins of this wonderful exterior prop from Troll 2, just sits here. Maybe someday somebody will buy it. Now, Troll 2 was directed by Claudio Fragasso and made by Italians. And Credence, who was one bizarre character created by Deborah Reed, lived here. The movie, of course, never played in theaters, became a cult item after being seen on HBO and on video. I'm going to turn the time over to Steve to give some observations about the film.
One thing that should be pointed out about this film is that the title of it is a little bit misleading. Troll 2 is actually not really officially a sequel. Also, it doesn't have any trolls in it because, as Doug pointed out, it's actually about goblins that are vegetarians, because when Claudio Fragasso's wife came up with the idea for this film, she was thinking of a horror film that made a comment about vegetarianism. And so Troll 2 is a very misleading title because, again, as I mentioned, there aren't actually any trolls in this film. It's goblins. So it's a very misleading title, and I think that's part of what makes it such an interesting cult phenomenon, because the title really doesn't reflect in any way the first film, Troll, which was made in 1986 and starring Julia Dreyfus from Seinfeld.
Thank you. You know, Darren Ewing is a local actor in the top of Utah, and he plays one of the kids who falls under Credence's lair she gets him. But anyways, he's in this church, although it's probably filmed at a soundstage, and he says those immortal lines: "The goblins are eating her," and I'm paraphrasing, "and then they're going to eat me. Oh my God!" And he's also stuck it like his feet are encased in dirt and everything. It's a pretty cool scene. You have all this plant stuff over his face. Also, in the very end of the movie, they go into what's supposed to be her house at this building, and in order to overcome the goblins, he has to take a hamburger and sort of rub it against the goblin sanctuary and everything, and that causes quite a bit of havoc for Credence and the rest of the goblins. Steve, do you have anything more to add about the film?
One other thing I want to add is I was reading an interesting article of an analysis of this film, and it was trying to parallel this film to another movie which is regarded as one of the worst films of all time, which is Manos, Hands of Fate, which if you haven't seen that film, I would recommend that you run out and get a copy of it, because it actually trumps this film in terms of being one of the all-time worst films of all time. In the article, the author, and I can't remember his name at the moment, but he mentions that the parallel between Manos and this film is that you have a family that are on vacation, and at some point in the film, as a family, they start singing "Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream." So it's interesting that this film would adopt that same kind of theme of a family. They're in a van, they're traveling to Nilbog, which is the town in the film, and as they're traveling, they start singing that song. The same thing happens at the beginning of Manos, the Hands of Fate. You have a young family, they're traveling, they're trying to find a hotel, and so they stop at the side of the road and they start singing this song, "Row, row, row your boat." So that's kind of the parallel of the two films.
Thanks. Let me wrap up really quick. You see this movie, you can see it on Hulu, you can see it for free on the internet. It stars George Hardy, Margot Prey, Connie Young. It's directed by Claudio Fragasso. You'll have fun looking at the dialogue because they basically didn't speak any English, the Italian crew, and the actors had to say the lines, which sound very stilted, amusingly so, in English. And also watch the documentary called Best Worst Movie that Michael Paul Stevenson, the little boy who starred in this film, made 20 odd years later. George Hardy is the narrator. He plays a dentist in The Family Man, who's the father who comes to Nilbog. It's a very, very good movie. First see Troll 2 and then see Best Worst Movie. You won't be disappointed. You'll love this movie. It may be cheesy at times, but it is unique. There's never been another film made like Troll 2, and that is the key to a great cult film. Steve, is there anything else you want to say before you go?
I want to say one more thing. If you watch the titles at the beginning of this film, you're going to notice a name, Drake Floyd.
Draco Floyd.
It says Drake.
Oh,
Floyd.
Drake? Okay.
And this is something that's important to point out, because that's a pseudonym for Claudio Fragasso. So it was directed by Claudio Fragasso, but yet his screen title says that it's Drake Floyd. And this is a common practice with Italian directors, because I know there's another Italian director, and I'm forgetting his name. He directed a film with John Saxon called Cannibal Apocalypse, and he uses the screen pseudonym of Anthony Dawson. So I don't know if this is actually, I think it is a common practice with Italian directors to change their name to make it look like it was an American director that made the film. So if you watch those opening credits of Troll 2 carefully, you'll notice that Drake Floyd is the director, which again, that's not Claudio's real name. He changed it to Drake Floyd for the credits of the opening of the film.
Thank you. Finally, here's the general store. It's still in existence. It's called Xanadu now. But if they want to make a Troll 2 sequel, Claudio Fragasso, you can do it! And thank you guys for watching this. Just take one more look at this wonderful Goblin Palace. Maybe if you look very closely, you can see Credence, Leonore Gilgood cackling. And I will say goodbye from Time 9 Crunch, and thank you very much.
gently down the stream. Row, row, row your boat gently forward.
Life is but a dream. I just have no spirit, you know that?